Modern life is hectic. Modern life is stressful. Modern life is digital, convenient. Modern life is reliant on technology and machines. But do we understand nature? Do we understand how nature works? Do we understand what we need to do to really look after the planet, care for nature, and for ourselves and other living beings? For centuries, Western nations, especially European ones, and then later on the States, once they established themselves, have gone out to suppress indigenous knowledge and wisdom that helped indigenous people for centuries or even longer to live more in harmony with nature. I decided to create a series now as part of Exploring Brain and Mind with a title of What the World Can Learn from ... And each week in the coming weeks, I'll be going into some indigenous wisdom and teachings that I think we can learn from, and that could help us human beings to look after the planet in a better way and to connect better with each other. Just open your mind, be willing to learn, and dive into teachings, wisdom, mindsets from other places around the world. So in this new series, we'll explore what we, particularly in modern Western and some other individualistic countries or societies, might learn from the worldviews, mindsets and teachings of other cultures. Yes, if you're a regular listener, you might have noticed that I'm very much into learning from other cultures, trying to understand other cultures, and this series goes well with that theme. Many of these cultures have held onto a sense of connection and wisdom that we seem to have lost somewhere along the way, especially with some kind of mindset on, always going for progress, and we know best, we are the superior beings. Well, not necessarily saying that, but kind of showing that in actions and slightly different phrased wordings. Very often religion played a part in that as well. We, with our religion, know best, so everyone should be like us and have the same mindset, thinking, use the same teachings. That was, and I think to some extent still is, part of the mindsets of Western countries. And maybe some other ones as well. I'm not saying it's just the Western ones, but predominantly. So today we start with the wisdom of indigenous peoples, like the mindset and teachings of many First Nations and native peoples across the world. It is a mindset rooted in relationship to the land, to each other, to spirit, and to the generations before and after us. One of the core principles in indigenous worldviews is that everything is connected. Humans, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, all are part of a living system that interacts and depends on one another. Let's not forget weather, climate, that has always changed and is still changing, and it's not just since the big Paris discussions in, 1992 or was it 95, when they started hyping up the whole climate change agenda. By the way, previously it was the ozone hole, our ozone layer problems. So the whole kind of hyping it up has started already in the 1980s. Just this as a note on the side. In many indigenous languages, there isn't even a word that separates nature from people. And that next one is a very important one. Humans are not above nature. We are part of it. I can't stress this enough. Humans are not above nature. They're trying to play God or creator or whatever you call it, but nature is the boss in the end. The earth is not something to own, but something to belong to. And that's another one of these problems. The earth is seen in many industrialized nations as something to exploit, something to abuse, something to use to the benefit of humans, and very often to the detriment of plants, animals, other living things. This sense of belonging creates not only environmental awareness, but emotional balance. When you feel connected to something greater than yourself, you tend to act with more care, humility, and purpose. It's a powerful antidote to the Western illusion of separation, which is the thinking, the idea that we exist as isolated individuals, disconnected from the natural world. Another difference lies in how time is perceived. In most indigenous cultures, time is cyclical rather than linear. Life moves in rhythms and seasons, not in a straight line based towards a goal. The circular understanding of time teaches patience and trust. You plant seeds today, not for immediate reward, but for the reward of future generations. Some indigenous communities even make major decisions by considering their impact on the next 7 generations. That is something that I've heard from Native American voices. And it's really in stark contrast of how we live now and how people are now. You click a button and you want to immediately get your reward for it. You order your food, you with a click, and you want it as soon as possible to arrive at your door. That's like the delivery thing. That you don't even have to leave the house to go to a place to get your food or to do your grocery shopping. Yes, I understand we have people who find it really difficult to do food shopping by themselves, going to shops and doing the shop. But generally, it's too many are becoming too reliant on these click and get options. It's not just about the shopping. It's about other things as well. You do something, you click a few buttons and you immediately want your reward. Your dopamine system in the brain is crying out for, I want it now. And this is so different from considering an impact that actions might have. But let's go back to topic. Imagine how our world might look if governments, corporations, and even individuals applied that principle, asking how will this choice affect life in 100 or 200 years. And I have to point out again to all these renewable energy things. So we put all this, the thought is good to have wind energy, to have solar energy, things like that. But what do we need to create this energy? We need kind of panels, equipment that is barely recyclable, if at all, that uses fossil fuels and other chemicals to operate. And that is not as easy and as cheap to operate as we were meant to believe. Plus, to create this kind of energy is you need vast quantities of like these wind turbines or solar panels on fields. What does this do? It destroys the environment. Because I wonder how many have actually thought about when there's really strong winds and so on, and when these turbines might not outlast the strength of the winds, or if hail or something destroys all the solar panels, then we've got all these materials strewn about in the environment. That's not really good for the environment. And there might be leaking of fossil fuels or chemicals. Is that good for the environment? No, it's not. So I doubt that these people who are hyping up the renewable energies have actually properly thought through what impact the installations of these solar panel fields, wind turbine fields have on future generations. I strongly question all this. Next thing is that Indigenous wisdom is often passed on orally, as in knowledge is the lived wisdom. It's passed on through stories, symbols, dance, and ceremony. Knowledge isn't something to be owned, it is lived, experienced, and shared. These stories teach moral lessons, practical survival skills, and spiritual truths all at once. They engage emotion and imagination, making the learning memorable and meaningful. This approach reminds us that real intelligence isn't only analytical, it's emotional, social, and spiritual too. It's the kind of wisdom that engages both brain and heart. And isn't it true that if we experience something, if we experience people sharing things in stories, can be much more powerful than just reading something that goes kind of in on one side of the head and out of the other? If something is just presented in a very monotonous, boring way, that information like that is very difficult to retain in the brain. Our brain likes something that engages it, that makes things memorable and easy to retain. Then there is the mindset of reciprocity. At the heart of many Indigenous teachings lies reciprocity. The understanding that giving and receiving must stay in balance. You take only what you need and you give back what you can. Gratitude and respect are woven into daily life, whether that is offering thanks to a tree before cutting wood or to the river for providing water. I'm sure this would sound rather alien to a lot of people in our hyper-digital, over-digitalized, as I call it, world. Why should I thank a river? Why should I thank a tree? And we very much have this mindset of take, exploit the world, exploit the planet, take out all the resources and just leave it all behind. Very often people leave it behind after taking the minerals out or something without kind of restoring it. Some people do, some people don't. And it's taking and taking and taking, but there's very often no giving back. That's a bit where mindfulness could kick in, if we do gratitude practices in the morning and in the evening to be grateful for what we have and to help other people by giving back, be it helping with fundraising, be it just helping a person out, even just holding the door open for someone. It's just a little thing, but it doesn't cost anything. It just costs a moment and it could make someone's day. And there's the community aspect. Indigenous healing traditions often involve the whole community. Illness is seen not only as a physical issue, but as an imbalance, emotional, spiritual, or social. Healing comes through ritual, story, song, and collective presence. There is a recognition that human beings heal in connection, not isolation. And modern science is now confirming this. We know that social support and belonging significantly improve physical and mental health outcomes. This is just the opposite from keeping people isolated. Period of March 2020 onwards, anyone? You know I'm not using the C word. Plus, there is research that, and I have to point him out again, Dr. Joe Dispenza does. He does a lot of work to do with coherence healing, people getting together to help other people heal. And he doesn't only do it at his retreats, but also there are coherence healing groups and things that he runs. So I can't say it often enough. Check out Dr. Joe Dispenza and his work, because he's doing pretty amazing stuff. And I really hope that it will have, in the long run, a massive impact on general outlook on health, on healing and all that. And it goes with what is said with regards to Indigenous cultures, because in Indigenous cultures, the community itself is part of the medicine, of the healing process. So what could be the lessons for our modern world, our modern mind? What can we, in our fast-paced, technology-driven societies, learn from Indigenous wisdom of Indigenous peoples? Maybe it is this. The well-being doesn't come from control or accumulation, but from connection and balance. That wisdom grows not from knowing more, but from listening deeply to people, to nature, and to silence. And that progress isn't only about moving forward. It's also about remembering where we come from. Our brains are wired for connection and reciprocity. When we live in alignment with those values, our minds thrive. Maybe the modern world doesn't need to invent new solutions. It simply needs to remember some very old ones. And I dare to claim that we can combine the new with the old in a good way. We just have to do it the right way. We just have to find what the right way is. And part of the right way is to include the minds and wisdom and teachings of Indigenous peoples that can help us restore some of the connection with nature, with our environment, with our living beings, with our trees and plants and rivers and the weather. Many of these people still know because they pass their knowledge on to next generations. That's something that I notice when we older people, do that with younger people to try and pass on what we have done in the past, how we have lived. We get met with ignorance. We get met with disbelief or with, well, that's how it was. We don't need that now. Everything's all different. But that just shows closed minds, closed mindsets, and no openness to learn from others from the past and present, have to kind of combine to create the future and to create a decent future for not just for humans, but for the whole world. So as you go through your week, perhaps take a moment to step outside the box of modern life. Look at a tree or feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice that everything alive, and that includes you, is part of the same living system. And when you next make a choice, however small it may be, ask, does this choice that I'm making nourish connection, or does it create separation? That question alone could shift how we live, how we relate, and how we lead. I hope the episode today gave you a few things to ponder about, to contemplate. And I hope you will be tuning in to the other episodes that are coming up in the next few weeks on the subject of what the world can learn from I'm going to visit other corners of the world again and go into their teachings, wisdom, and mindset. This brings us to the end of today's episode of Exploring Brain and Mind. Share the episode with those people who may be interested, even if it creates debate. If it creates debate, it's actually even better. And if you don't follow already, follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music and YouTube. And thanks for listening.